It was a bright Sunday morning at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. The air hummed with the usual rhythm of travel, the rolling of carry-ons, the indistinct announcements over the loudspeakers, the scent of coffee and warm pretzels wafting through the terminal. Families moved in groups, business travelers marched with purpose, and sleepy tourists rubbed their eyes after red ice from faraway places. Mariah Johnson, a 34-year-old aerospace engineer from Charlotte, North Carolina, strolled into Terminal B with her usual quiet composure. Her thick, coiled hair was pulled into a low bun, and her outfit was sharp but simple, a black blazer, jeans, and sneakers. Slung over one shoulder was a laptop bag filled with documents, schematics, and presentation notes. She was heading to Los Angeles to speak at the West Coast Aerospace Safety Symposium, where top engineers, pilots, and regulators would gather to discuss the future of flight. For Mariah, flying wasn't just transportation. It was her life's work. Since she was a child, she had been fascinated by planes. Her father, a retired Air Force mechanic, had once taken her to a small air show in rural Georgia when she was 9. From the moment she saw a jet take off, slicing through the clouds, she was hooked. She had dedicated her life to making sure those machines stayed in the air and kept people safe. Despite her accomplishments, a degree from MIT, a patented aircraft vibration diagnostic system, and countless hours on crash investigation teams, Mariah was no stranger to discrimination. In countless meetings, she'd watched eyes slide past her to the white man next to her, only to be shocked when she took the lead on a complex explanation. More than once, she'd been called sweetheart by someone with half her qualifications. But she'd also learned to let her results speak louder than the noise. She had climbed the ladder on merit, brick by brick, and she knew her worth. At the gate, she glanced up at the display. Flight 417, Atlanta to Los Angeles, on time. Mariah exhaled a breath of relief and moved to sit by the window. She liked watching the tarmac, the dance of airport vehicles, the loading of luggage, the graceful turn of aircraft as they taxied to the runway. Then she saw it. A shiver of concern passed through her as her eyes focused on the Boeing 737 parked just beyond the glass. Something wasn't right. One of the engines, the left one, was vibrating in a way that immediately triggered her instincts. It was subtle, barely noticeable to the untrained eye, but she knew better. The vibrations weren't rhythmic. They were uneven, intermittent, classic signs of a rotor imbalance or worse, an issue with the turbine blades. She leaned closer to the glass, narrowing her eyes. Passengers were already boarding. A maintenance crew was doing last-minute checks, but no one seemed concerned. Still, she watched that engine like a hawk. The nacelle shimmered faintly in the morning heat, but beneath the metal, she could almost hear the mechanical distress. Mariah stood up and walked to the gate agent, a middle-aged woman named Karen, blonde hair, blue suit, and efficient smile. "Hi," Mariah said politely. "I'm an aerospace engineer, and I was watching the plane. I noticed something that might be worth checking again. The left engine is showing signs of abnormal vibration." Karen blinked, her smile faltering for just a moment. "I'm sure everything's fine, ma'am. The plane has been cleared." "I understand," Mariah said calmly. "But this isn't normal vibration. I've worked on engines like these. If you could just radio the maintenance team and ask them to take another look, I'd feel better. It might be nothing, but it could also be a serious issue." The agent's eyes narrowed slightly. "Are you with the airline?" "No, I work independently, but I specialize in engine diagnostics." Karen's polite expression hardened by a fraction. "Well, unless you're with the airline or the FAA, I'm not authorized to escalate anything." Mariah stood her ground. "I'm just asking for a second look." Karen glanced at the line of passengers boarding. "I'll pass along your concern," she said flatly. Mariah walked back to her seat, heart pounding. She had no idea if the agent would actually do anything, and that scared her more than the engine itself. She pulled out her phone and typed a few notes about the vibration patterns she saw, referencing a report she'd written just months ago on compressor stalls. 10 minutes later, boarding was nearly complete. Mariah hadn't seen anyone approach the engine again. Suddenly, a young man in a pilot's uniform stepped off the plane and approached the gate desk. She recognized him as the first officer, maybe in his early 30s, white, buzzed haircut. Karen leaned in to whisper something to him. His eyes found Mariah instantly, and she could see the doubt on his face before he even walked toward her. "Ma'am, I understand you had a concern about the engine?" Mariah stood, nodding. "Yes. I'm an aerospace engineer. I observed irregular vibrations in the left engine while it was idling on the tarmac. It could be an imbalance or a compressor issue. I'm not trying to cause panic, I'm just saying it warrants another inspection." He crossed his arms. "You saw this from inside the terminal?" "Yes," she said firmly. With trained eyes. He chuckled softly, not unkindly but with a clear trace of condescension. "We have a top-tier maintenance crew, ma'am. If there was a problem, they'd catch it." Mariah met his gaze. "And I respect that. But this isn't about ego. This is about safety." There was a pause. Something in her tone must have struck a nerve, because he didn't dismiss her outright. "I'll mention it to the captain," he said finally, then turned and walked away. She watched him reboard. Minutes passed. Then, to her astonishment, she saw two maintenance workers walk out and approach the engine. They conferred briefly, one of them pulling out a vibration diagnostic tool. Mariah's heart pounded. She didn't want to be right. She wanted that engine to be fine. But deep down, she knew. After 15 minutes, the maintenance workers disappeared into the hatch beneath the aircraft. Then, shockingly, the boarding process was halted. The intercom crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We've encountered a minor technical issue and are conducting additional checks for your safety." Mariah sat down, her breath catching in her throat. People around her grumbled. Some rolled their eyes. But she didn't care. If she'd stopped one potential tragedy, it was worth every disapproving glance. The man beside her, a stocky businessman with a Texas accent, looked over. "What did you say to them?" he asked with a half-smile. "I just asked them to take another look at the engine," she replied. He raised an eyebrow. "You an engineer or something?" "Something like that," she said, then smiled. Outside, the maintenance crew was pulling off an engine cover. And inside, a truth was taking flight. The plane was grounded. Technicians moved like a quiet swarm around the left engine of the Boeing 737. Mariah sat near the window, watching every move. Her instincts had been right, something was wrong. And though no official announcement had confirmed it yet, the sudden change in pace, the way mechanics avoided eye contact with passengers, and the tense body language of the crew spoke volumes. More passengers had begun noticing her. Some glanced sideways, whispering after hearing that she'd said something to stop the flight. Others looked annoyed. A few, intrigued. In a world where delays were often met with frustration and blame, Mariah was now the unspoken variable in everyone's morning. Her phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Carlos Ramirez, her co-panelist at the symposium in Los Angeles. "Carlos, hey superstar, just landed at LAX. Can't wait for your talk tomorrow. Let me know if you need anything." She smiled faintly and typed back. "Mariah, might be late. Caught something wrong with the plane before boarding. They're inspecting it now." "Carlos, are you serious? What did you see?" Mariah, abnormal vibration on the left engine. Classic signs of rotor imbalance or blade damage. Carlos, damn. Good eye. Proud of you. That could have saved lives. Mariah stared at the words. Saved lives. The phrase echoed in her mind. A uniformed man approached her, not the pilot, but an airport operations officer. His badge read T. Larson, and he carried a clipboard in one hand. His expression was professional but guarded. "Miss Johnson?" "Yes?" "We'd like you to come with us to the operations room. We have a few questions." Passengers looked over. Mariah stood up, keeping her voice level. Is there a problem? No, ma'am. Standard protocol when someone reports a technical concern. We just want to get a statement. She followed him past the gate, down a hallway used by staff. The fluorescent lights above flickered slightly, casting everything in a pale yellow hue. Inside the small operations room, two other men waited, one in a Delta uniform, the other wearing a badge from the FAA. Mariah introduced herself again, repeating what she saw, how she recognized the irregular engine behavior, and why she'd spoken up. The FAA representative, an older man named Milton Green, nodded slowly as he scribbled notes. Do you often inspect aircraft before boarding, Miss Johnson? Not as a habit, she replied. But when something looks wrong, I trust my training. And you say you've worked in propulsion diagnostics? Yes. I helped design vibration analysis tools used in post-maintenance inspections. I also worked on a joint report with NASA regarding compressor stall incidents in aging engine models. There was a pause. She could feel it, the subtle current of disbelief. Not from Green, but from the Delta rep. His name tag read David Wessler. He hadn't spoken yet, but the furrow in his brow told her enough. So you're not affiliated with any regulatory agency currently? He asked, his voice laced with skepticism. No, she said calmly. I'm independent now. I consult. And you happen to notice a problem from inside the terminal? I noticed a pattern. That engine wasn't running smooth idle. It was pulsing, almost like a flutter. That's not normal. You know that. Wessler leaned back, his expression unreadable. You understand that we have protocols for these things. We rely on licensed inspectors and certified engineers. Mariah met his gaze. And I am a certified engineer. Another pause. Green cleared his throat. Actually, he said, we just received the preliminary maintenance report. Your suspicion was correct. One of the fan blades in the left engine was partially fractured. Hairline crack. Could have gone unnoticed. Wessler looked stunned. That's not possible. Those blades passed inspection. Apparently not, Green replied dryly. The technician says it likely began as a stress fracture from a prior flight. It wasn't visible until the vibration testing flagged it. Mariah sat still. A mix of validation and dread filled her chest. She was right, and that meant 180 people had just avoided a possible disaster. But Wessler's tone didn't soften. Well, that's lucky, he muttered. Still, we can't have passengers conducting unofficial safety checks from the gate. She narrowed her eyes. Would you rather I said nothing? He didn't respond. Green stood. Miss Johnson, I want to thank you. You may have saved lives today. We'll include your report in the FAA log. If you're willing, I'd also like to cite your observation in our review. Of course, Mariah said. Anything to help. As she left the room, Wessler stayed behind, muttering something under his breath. She didn't need to hear it. She'd heard it before, from boardrooms, from managers, even from professors. Too bold. Too loud. Too confident. And she knew what made them uncomfortable, not just her knowledge, but the fact that it came from someone who looked like her. Back in the terminal, the atmosphere had changed. Flight 417 was officially cancelled, and a new aircraft was being prepped for passengers. Some had already rebooked on other flights. Others loitered near the gate, confused or frustrated. As Mariah approached the desk, Karen, the gate agent, looked up and gave her a tight smile. They're putting you on the next flight out, she said. First class, no charge. Mariah blinked. Really? Karen nodded. Captain requested it himself. Said you earned it. It was a small gesture. But in a system so often dismissive, even a small acknowledgement could feel like a mountain moving. As she boarded the next flight hours later, Mariah finally exhaled. She settled into the wide leather seat, watching the new engine outside, this one perfectly still, perfectly calm. The flight attendant offered her champagne. she declined. Instead, she opened her laptop and began drafting a blog post. What I saw from the gate, a lesson in listening. It wasn't just about the engine. It was about how close people had come to ignoring her. Again. And how sometimes, the quiet warnings were the most critical. She titled the file and hit save. Then she watched as the clouds swallowed the city below. The hum of the engines was steady, almost hypnotic. The new aircraft, another Boeing 737, different tail number, sliced smoothly through the skies somewhere over Texas. Mariah sat in seat 2A, her legs comfortably stretched out in first class. The warm afternoon light spilled through the small window beside her, painting the seat in soft gold. But despite the comfort and quiet, her mind wasn't at ease. She replayed the morning in her head over and over. The vibration. The refusal. The confrontation. The validation. And then, like a closing act, that cold remark from Wessler. She knew men like him. Their kind wore civility like a jacket, shedding at the moment a woman, especially a black woman, displayed expertise that challenged their authority. A flight attendant passed by with a tray of drinks. "Can I get you something, Miss Johnson?" the woman asked warmly. Mariah smiled. "Just water, thank you." "Coming right up." She pulled out her tablet and glanced at the rough draft of her blog post. Her fingers hovered over the screen, but she hesitated. Telling the story meant something. But it also invited scrutiny. People would question her, belittle her, accuse her of seeking attention. That wasn't new, but it still exhausted her. Suddenly, the plane shook, a sharp jolt that rattled the tray table in front of her. Several passengers gasped. Drinks sloshed. The overhead lights flickered. Then, silence. The engine still hummed. No alarms. No descent. Just silence. A second jolt, stronger this time, rocked the cabin. A bottle of water rolled down the aisle. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged to life. A muffled voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've encountered some unexpected turbulence. Please remain seated and ensure your seatbelts are fastened." Mariah frowned. That didn't feel like turbulence. It wasn't sustained or choppy. These were sharp, intermittent shocks, mechanical, not atmospheric. Her fingers flew across the screen of her tablet. She opened a diagnostic app, one of her own design, which used accelerometer data from her tablet to detect vibration frequencies in enclosed environments. Originally built for lab use, it could pick up subtle environmental patterns if placed close to an aircraft wall or window. She pressed the device against the side panel beside her seat. The data spiked, then settled, then spiked again. Not normal. "Excuse me," she said to the flight attendant when she passed again. "Could I speak to one of the pilots?" "It's important." The attendant gave her a practiced smile. "They're a little busy at the moment, ma'am." "Everything's fine, just some bumpy air." "I'm not a nervous passenger," Mariah said, keeping her voice calm. "I'm an aerospace engineer. I have reason to believe this isn't weather-related." The flight attendant's smile faltered. "Let me see what I can do." 10 minutes passed. Another lurch. This time, the lights dimmed, not fully, but enough to feel wrong. Mariah unbuckled just as the first officer stepped out of the cockpit and walked toward her. "You again," he said with a surprised half-smile. "Didn't expect to see you on this flight." "I didn't expect to diagnose 2 aircraft in one day," she replied. He sat down across the aisle, his tone less skeptical than the earlier pilot's. "What's going on?" he asked. "I'm picking up irregular mechanical vibrations, again. Not continuous like weather turbulence. These are pulses. My app is detecting harmonic spikes, somewhere near the rear, probably near the APU or stabilizer." He looked taken aback. "You're saying it's structural?" "Possibly. Could be something minor, but if it's the horizontal stabilizer fluttering at high altitudes, that's serious." The pilot rubbed his chin. We haven't gotten any warnings from the cockpit. Then it's early stage, she said. But I wouldn't ignore it. He hesitated. Okay. I'll relay it. We'll check with ground maintenance once we land. Mariah shook her head. That's not good enough. If we lose stability control at altitude, we may not make it to landing. Now, the smile vanished from his face. Are you suggesting we divert? I'm suggesting you at least descend. Stabilizer issues have led to mid-air breakups in the past, Alaska 261, for one. The name hit him like a punch. Every pilot knew that story, the horrifying loss of control over the Pacific in 2000 due to a faulty stabilizer screw. He stood up immediately. I'll be right back. Mariah watched as he disappeared into the cockpit. The passengers around her were growing restless. Another shake, not strong, but more frequent now, enough that the quiet murmurs were rising to whispers. Moments later, the captain's voice came over the intercom again, this time more serious. Ladies and gentlemen, as a precautionary measure, we'll be initiating a controlled descent to a lower cruising altitude. There is no immediate danger, but we are following standard safety protocols. Mariah exhaled. Finally. The engines shifted pitch as the plane began descending from 35,000 feet to 25,000. The vibrations immediately lessened. Another passenger, an older white woman across the aisle, leaned toward Mariah. What's going on? She asked. Did you say something to the pilots? Mariah nodded. Just a hunch. It's better to be safe. The woman looked confused, then skeptical. You work with the airline? No, Mariah replied. I'm an aerospace engineer. The woman's eyes narrowed slightly. Really? Mariah smiled calmly. Yes. Really? The woman didn't respond, but turned away, lips pursed. Mariah had seen that look before. Polite disbelief. As if saying, you don't look like an engineer. The descent continued. The captain came on again, this time with better news. We're continuing toward Dallas-Fort Worth, where we'll be making a scheduled stop for inspection. Thank you for your cooperation. Mariah finally relaxed, just a little. The danger had passed, for now. When the plane touched down in Dallas, a small group of FAA officers met the aircraft. The flight was terminated, and all passengers rebooked. Most were annoyed, but no one protested too hard. A few, like the older woman, glanced at Mariah again, this time with something that resembled respect, if not understanding. As she stepped off the plane, one of the FAA officials approached her. Miss Johnson? Yes? He handed her a card. We'd like to speak with you again. We believe you've just identified a critical issue. We've got our engineers looking into it now, but your quick thinking might have prevented a serious mid-air event. Mariah accepted the card with a nod. She didn't need validation, but it felt good to know that someone was finally listening. And this time it was the sky that had heard her voice. The morning after the emergency landing, Mariah Johnson woke to 42 unread messages and 13 missed calls. Her inbox was on fire. Subject, urgent, NBC requesting interview. Subject, FAA wants official statement today. Subject, CNN segment, engineer saves plane? Subject, Delta internal, you're trending. She blinked at the screen, still lying in her hotel bed in Dallas, wrapped in silence but surrounded by digital noise. It had only been 24 hours since she pointed out the failing engine from the terminal. Less than 12 since she warned the pilots about structural vibrations mid-flight. And now, somehow, the entire country was watching. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Carlos. Carlos, you are everywhere. They're calling you the woman who saved 2 planes. You okay? Mariah, I don't know yet. Carlos, you did something incredible. The world finally sees it. Mariah, that's not what they see. She set the phone down and sat up slowly. The room was cold, clean, too quiet for the storm unfolding online. She opened Twitter. At Aviation Talk. Breaking, Mariah Johnson, an independent aerospace engineer, identified two safety failures on two separate Delta flights in 24 hours. FAA confirms both issues. Heroic or sabotage? Face with monocle. At Read News 24. Thread, is Mariah Johnson a genius, or is something else going on here? Who gets lucky twice in one day? At AeroMom75. So now random people in airports are allowed to call the shots? Give me a break. This isn't an episode of Scandal. At Real Engineer Tom. I'm calling it now, no way this lady caught two failures by accident. Either she tampered or someone planted her there. Wake up, people. Mariah's stomach turned. The praise was there, yes. But the suspicion was louder. And more familiar. She'd seen this cycle before. A black woman speaks up. At first, people cheer. Then they question. Then they doubt. Then they attack. Within an hour, several YouTube videos had already been posted, thumbnails with her face, titles like The Whistleblower at 35,000 feet, Too Smart to be Real, and The Particularly Venomous. Affirmative action engineer or aviation savior? She clenched her jaw. Carlos called again. This time, she answered. Hey, she said flatly. Hey, he replied, his voice soft. I know what you're seeing. I've seen it too. They're accusing me of sabotage, she said. Of planting evidence. Like I'm some vigilante engineer looking for clout. Listen to me, he said. You know what you did. And the FAA knows too. That's what matters. Do they? She asked. Or are they just waiting to see which way public opinion goes before they decide if I'm a hero or a threat? Carlos was silent. I didn't do this for fame, she added. I did it because no one else was looking. I know, he said. But now everyone's looking. So be ready. Just then, a knock at her hotel room door. Mariah approached cautiously and opened it. Two people stood outside, a tall white man in a dark blue suit and a younger black woman holding a tablet. Both wore ID badges marked FAA, Incident Investigation Unit. Miss Johnson, the man said. I'm Agent DeWitt, this is Agent Miles. We're leading the inquiry into yesterday's in-flight incident. May we come in? She stepped aside. We'd like to formally document your account of what occurred during both flights, Miles said kindly. You are not under suspicion. Quite the opposite. Mariah nodded, relieved, but only slightly. For the next hour, they went through everything, her observation of the engine, the vibration app, her discussion with the pilot, and the descent order. She showed them the readings on her tablet. Miles was clearly impressed. You developed this yourself? She asked. I designed the algorithm, Mariah said. It's not perfect. But it was enough. It saved lives, DeWitt added. We have confirmation that a tail assembly component had begun delaminating. If it had progressed undetected. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. But DeWitt's tone shifted. I do have to ask, he continued, flipping a page in his notebook. How did you end up on both of these flights? The chances of catching two issues like this, in the same day, are extraordinary. Mariah met his gaze. I booked one flight. They reassigned me to the second. I didn't choose the plane. We've reviewed the maintenance logs, Miles added. Both aircraft were cleared, but there are inconsistencies. We're investigating further. Inconsistencies? Reports signed off but not cross-checked, DeWitt said. And possibly, forged signatures from a Delta subcontractor. We're looking into whether someone knowingly approved unsafe aircraft. Mariah's eyes narrowed. You think it was internal? We're not ruling out negligence. Or deliberate oversight. Silence fell between them. When the agents left, Mariah stared out the window. The Dallas skyline shimmered beneath the hot afternoon sun. Her heart felt heavier now. If someone had knowingly allowed faulty planes into the sky, what did that say about the industry she'd spent her life in? Later that night, she checked her email again. There, at the top. Subject, panel keynote suspended. It was from the Aerospace Futures Symposium organizers. Dear Ms. Johnson, due to current media attention surrounding your recent involvement in Delta Flight 417 and Flight 612, and until all investigations conclude, we are placing your keynote appearance on hold. We appreciate your understanding. She stared at the screen in disbelief. They were suspending her. She'd saved 2 planes. 2 flights. Hundreds of people. And their response was to silence her? She opened a new document. Title, When Saving Lives Isn't Enough. She began typing, fury and clarity driving her hands. I am not a threat. I am not a plant. I am not lucky. I am an engineer. I saw something wrong. I acted. And the fact that this makes me a target is the real danger. She hit save. That night, alone in her hotel room, Mariah knew one thing for certain. If they wouldn't give her a stage, she'd build her own. 3 days had passed since Mariah Johnson's name lit up every major news outlet in the country. She should have been a hero. A whistleblower celebrated for quick thinking and technical brilliance. But instead, she was walking a tightrope between fame and suspicion, both sharpened by the color of her skin. Her face was on news panels, but her voice rarely was. They were talking about her, not to her. Meanwhile, the FAA had gone quiet. Too quiet. She sat in a coffee shop near the hotel, watching a live stream on her laptop. A press conference with Delta Airlines. A gray-haired executive named Russell Carmichael, VP of Operations, stood at the podium with a polished smile. We take safety with the utmost seriousness, he said. And while we are grateful for the vigilance of Ms. Johnson, we want to make it absolutely clear, these were isolated incidents. Routine wear. Our systems are designed to catch these things. Lies, Mariah thought. She sipped her coffee and opened the FAA document she'd been anonymously sent the night before. A source inside the investigation. The header was red-tagged, internal use only. The document revealed more than she expected, and more than the public would ever be allowed to see. Maintenance log anomaly, Flight 417. Part #DTX847 was signed off without inspection. Signature belonged to a tech who retired 6 months earlier. Flight 612 vibration report. Previous pilot noted mild resonance. Entry scrubbed from digital records. Manual logbook page missing. It wasn't just negligence. It was cover-up. And someone was making the evidence disappear. Mariah's stomach churned. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated. Answered. Miss Johnson, said a deep voice. This is Douglas Avery, Chief Legal Counsel for Delta. Her grip tightened. I was hoping we could talk, he said smoothly. Off the record. I'm listening, she said cautiously. We understand you've been contacted by internal FAA sources. I'm calling to advise you that any disclosure of privileged information from federal investigations would be considered unlawful under Section 150.13 of. Are you threatening me? She interrupted. A pause. Not at all. Just reminding you of the legal boundaries. We're very interested in avoiding a media circus. I'm not the one who started it, she said. I'm the one who stopped a plane from falling out of the sky. Miss Johnson, he said, voice tightening, you're a very smart woman. You know how stories get twisted. You're making a lot of noise. And in aviation, noise isn't always good. He hung up. She sat there, heart pounding, surrounded by strangers in the cafe, each one oblivious that their safety, their lives, had nearly been compromised. Twice. Suddenly, her laptop pinged a new video notification from her private YouTube channel. Carlos had uploaded it. Title, She Saved Your Flight. Now they want her silent. Thumbnail, Mariah, at the gate, staring at the first plane's shaking engine. She clicked play. Carlos's voice narrated. This is Mariah Johnson. She's an aerospace engineer. 3 days ago, she stopped Flight 417 from taking off. Hours later, she was on Flight 612, where her warning forced an emergency descent. 2 planes. 1 woman. And instead of a medal, she's facing threats, silence, and worse. Cut to clips of news anchors asking if sabotage was possible. Clips of Twitter posts saying she was a fraud. Then, audio of the engine shaking, caught on someone's phone. Mariah's calm voice asking to speak to the pilot. The moment the plane descended. We talk about bravery in hindsight. We love heroes once they're dead. But what about when they're alive and inconvenient? It ended on Mariah, sitting quietly, watching the world spin around her. The video had only been up for 20 minutes, and already had 88,000 views. She refreshed. 95,300. 112,000. The comments poured in. At Skydad92. I was on Flight 417. I saw her. She's not lying. At Fly Right Now. My cousin works for Delta. He says there's a lot of internal panic. Mariah exposed something big. At That Engineer Girl. I'm a black woman in tech. I've been dismissed in rooms I built. Watching Mariah, I see all of us. The tide was turning. Suddenly, her phone rang again. This time, a different number. It was Miles, the FAA investigator. Mariah, she said quickly, I can't talk long. But you need to know, they found something. Where? Maintenance hangar in Atlanta. Part of the vibration damper system, intentionally disabled. Not worn. Not failed. Removed. Mariah went cold. Someone wanted that plane to fail? We don't know yet. But we're escalating this to federal security. It may not just be a maintenance issue. Miles paused, then added, we're putting you under protection. Someone doesn't want you speaking out. The call ended. Mariah closed the laptop and looked around the cafe. Her instincts were screaming. She was being watched. She pulled her hoodie up and quietly walked out, avoiding eye contact. Back in her hotel room, she locked the door, lowered the blinds, and grabbed her journal. At the top of a blank page, she wrote. They expected silence. They got me. Outside, a black SUV slowly rolled past the hotel entrance. Its tinted windows reflected nothing. The battle had just begun. At a congressional hearing, Mariah Johnson bravely speaks out about the 2 flights she helped stop, one of which was deliberately sabotaged. She explains how her expertise and determination saved hundreds of lives, despite efforts to silence her. Her testimony makes headlines, several Delta executives resign, one is arrested, and the FAA launches a full investigation. Instead of chasing fame, Mariah starts Wings of Proof, an independent watchdog organization fighting for transparency and safety in aviation. Over time, her group gains traction, forming real partnerships and giving engineers a voice. A year later, her photo appears in airports nationwide, a symbol of courage and truth. She's no longer just an engineer, she's the woman who spoke up when it mattered most, and changed the skies for everyone.